What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and there is currently a massive boycott emerging after Elon Musk has openly stated that companies like Disney are boycotting Twitter in order to virtue signal. Beyond this story, there's more nonsense from CEO Bob Iger, who's trying to shift the blame of Disney underperforming on the people beneath him. And finally, I will speak on the Fallout Amazon Prime show that is unfortunately looking to become Netflix's The Witcher 2.0. There's a lot to go over, so let's begin. Firstly, I think it's important for context we see the clip of Elon Musk that sparked this whole boycott. Musk was asked about the boycotting of major companies like IBM, Disney, and more that have all pulled ads from Twitter, to which Elon said this.
I want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go yourself. Go yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
And now, due to this comment, it sparked another huge controversy within itself, leading to thousands of users boycotting and canceling their subscriptions to Disney Plus in response to Elon's remarks. According to Forbes, this boycott is largely being pushed by what they call right-wing users. Because, of course, we need to put people into labels that are convenient when it comes to things like this. Forbes says accounts like End Wokeness are pushing for their users to cancel their Disney accounts in response to their boycotts of advertising on Twitter or X, and here we are now. According to the New York Times, Twitter will lose around $75 million in revenue due to these companies refusing to run their ads on the platform. Apparently, these companies are saying that their choice to reject Twitter is due to the platform pushing anti-Semitism. But I think the real reason why these companies refuse to pay advertising on Twitter is simple. It's because it's quite literally one of the only places within the digital landscape that allows for actual real conversations without the fear of censorship. Let's dial it back a second and look at the past. You know, as well as I do, that during the pandemic era, Twitter was censoring and banning people for what they deemed wrongthink. Many users were not allowed to express their opinions without fear of shadow banning or just outright being cancelled for this. Then of course you had the whole vaccine nonsense, which thankfully I never got it myself, but that created a social divide in the populace seemingly overnight. This then created segregated groups of those who were deemed politically correct and those who were not. It was not a good time for freedom of expression is what I'm saying. People were being controlled and forced into believing things not because they genuinely did, but simply so they wouldn't be thrown into the fire. When Elon bought Twitter, whether you're left or right or upside down, you have to admit that the site has become infinitely better in almost every way. You're actually able to speak your mind on the platform, and whether the things being discussed are not politically correct when compared to what other platforms allow, you still have to admit this simple truth, which is that freedom of expression and speech is paramount to the lifeblood of our ability to interact with one another. And I've noticed, as you have probably too, that once Elon bought Twitter, this spelled doom for many of these companies. Because Twitter is considered the world's #1 platform for discussion, and it's no longer within the grasp of globalists who want to control the flow of information. For example, if you're unfortunately Canadian like myself, you can't share links or stories on platforms like Facebook due to the Canadian government's new rules of information sharing. So if you only use Facebook, for example, as your primary source of knowing what's happening in the world, you're being fed false narratives and curated information designed to fit agendas. It's also why Facebook's Twitter variant called Threads never took off, because they demand you tell them your full legal name and everything prior to making a Threads account. Why do they do this, you may ask? Some will argue it's to ensure every user is a real person, but that's not the real reason. The true purpose is to ensure if you say anything on their platform that is deemed wrongthink, they conveniently have a direct link to what you said being connected to your personal information. So if you say something they don't agree with, they can contact your job and get you fired with ease. A lot of these companies these days that push concepts like ESG are fully committed in pushing the message in any way they can. They are also vigilant in ensuring that they feed each other in a self-replenishing cycle. Disney promotes on Facebook. They both think and act the same. It's the company equivalent of birds of a feather flock together. But when it comes to Twitter and Elon Musk in particular, that's like a wrench in the system for them. Because they know that they can't buy Elon Musk because he's obviously one of the richest people in the world already. He's basically a base Redditor with a bank account with Tony Stark levels of money in it. They hate that the guy who controls the single most powerful space for freedom of speech can't be bought by them. And that pisses them off, dear viewer. It angers them greatly. And this is why the boycott of Twitter is happening, because it's no longer controlled by the same people who have forced companies like Disney or Facebook to bend their knees. These boycotts are not because of Elon Musk agreeing with a tweet. These ad revenue boycotts have been happening and have been threatened ever since Elon walked into Twitter's headquarters with a literal sink in his arms, and fired all the woke weirdos who were overpaid and did nothing for Twitter. You tell me, Twitter's workforce has been dramatically reduced and has removed thousands of people who did literally nothing for the company except virtue signal, eat free food, and pander. Has the site operated worse or crashed since? No? Exactly. Elon proved when he took over Twitter that these people are not needed. And this boycott is simply just another convenient whataboutism that sites like Forbes can push in order to virtue signal to their corporate masters. Elon even publicly called out Disney CEO Bob Iger within that viral moment, and for good reason. Like this article recently from Bounding Into Comics, which states that CEO Bob Iger has admitted that pushing woke content is not working on the populace. And I think a very good reason for why it's no longer working is because of places like Twitter. Think about it, when Twitter was shadow banning people for wrongthink, these sorts of products couldn't be openly criticized the way they are now. Largely speaking, content was made with ESG and social messaging, and it was pushed out with no critiques or backlash. This allowed this sort of content to be accepted because the meta at the time was you either accept the sludge or you're thrown into the shadow realm. But once Twitter became free again, the uprising of free speech and ordinary people like myself have begun to sprout out and speak out against these things. This isn't a coincidence is what I'm saying. The outright rejection of the woke mind virus directly coincides with the freedom of platforms like Twitter. Elon Musk's version of Twitter has emboldened the general populace into coming to terms with their freedom of expression. And whether these advertisers want to admit it or not, the existence of a free platform like Twitter has led to the uprising of people who are against these things. And of course, people like Bob Iger aren't happy that people like Elon Musk are against him. Because like I previously reported in my last video, Disney has lost 56% of their value between the years of 2022 and 23. They genuinely cannot afford to provoke more culture wars. They are not in a position to stoke the fires of an already angered consumer base that is rejecting their every move. And the last thing Bobby Boy over at Disney wanted was for Elon Musk and his Twitter platform to wage war on Disney, but alas, here we are. And it's a bet that's been made by Disney and many other companies' hands already. Before, they could spit in people's faces and tell them that it's raining and people would have to accept it or be exiled. But now, people are waking up and it's becoming mainstream to criticize these business practices. And it's all thanks to Twitter or special events like Into the Panderverse. Bob Iger was recently at the 2023 DealBook Summit, where public interviews are held with people who control powerful companies like Bob Iger with Disney obviously does. The interview was conducted by Andrew Sorkin of the New York Times, who openly asked Bob Iger if Disney's push of woke content has backfired or not, to which Bob Iger said, and I quote, "Let me start with content and your comment about woke characters. Our primary objective in creating content as a company, save for ABC News, which is obviously to inform, is to entertain. Whether it's sports, whether it's Disney, whether it's Marvel, make things that entertain people. And the good news is that there's a marketplace out there that demands entertainment. It's a fantastic business to be in because of that." I think what had happened over a period of time and what was building and maybe it reached a peak of some sort while I was gone, is that creators lost sight of what their number one objective needed to be. Often when we entertain, and we've entertained as a company over the 100 years we've been in business, we have entertained with values and with having a positive impact on the world in many different ways. I use Black Panther as a great example of that, just in terms of fostering acceptance, or the movie Coco, which Pixar did about the Day of the Dead. I like being able to do that, entertain, and if you can infuse it with positive messagings that have a good impact on the world, fantastic. But that should not be the objective. When I came back, what I have really tried to do is to return to our roots, which is remember we have to entertain first, it's not about messages. Again, if your story can have a positive impact, so there's that, and I've worked hard since I've been back in reminding the creative community who are our partners, our employees, that that's the objective. And I don't really want to tolerate the opposite, so there's that, end quote. Now that we've heard what Iger thinks, here's why it makes no sense and he's lying to you. There's a part there where he says there's been a period of time where creators have lost sight of what their #1 objective must be, which is to tell stories. But let's be real, it's not a period of time, it has become the new normal for places like Disney. He frames it as if it's something that has come and gone, but that's simply not true. And when he says creators have lost sight, that also makes no sense because my brother in Christ, you're the CEO of Disney. None of these things can get made without your approval. All of these blunders from Wish, the Marvels, and more don't just suddenly happen and materialize out of nowhere. These are things that were presented to you, and you along with your board of executives sat there in your expensive chairs with your free food and coffee, and you all debated and eventually came to the conclusion that these were things that were worth pursuing. It's Bob Iger's signature on a document that led to travesties like She-Hulk getting made, which is now very likely never getting a second season, which thank God for that at least. Wish was a massive failure, but the people hired and the concepts made didn't just happen. Bob Iger signed off on those. These failures have his blood interwoven into the DNA of their beings. These failures, these misfires, they are as much a part of Bob Iger as they are Disney. There's even a part during his interview where Bob Iger says diversity is key to Disney's strength. And immigration policies should be allowed to bring in more people to Western countries because it helps places like Disney. But this only helps one thing for Disney, which is by hiring more diverse workers, they are able to incrementally increase their ESG standing. It clearly hasn't had a positive impact on the quality of their brand since everything they're doing is in the red and failing. They fired the guy who made Quantumania and adapted Kang for the MCU. She-Hulk's team has been thrown into the abyss as well. And now, according to ThatParkPlace.com's article, another rumor has emerged stating that Ironheart is being completely reworked and Disney is not happy with its quality either. And it's not surprising when one of the actors within Ironheart states they want the show to be something for trans audiences. Which is like, okay, but the majority of your viewer base isn't that, so why make it a focus when people are clearly not wanting to watch it? It doesn't take a genius to look at the state of Marvel today and say that a lot of these things are getting cancelled or reworked because of audiences becoming more vocal for their disdain towards it. And like I said, a lot of that is due to places like Twitter allowing that freedom of speech to run wild. Sure, that freedom of speech will allow for unsavory types to spread vile rhetorics, but I genuinely do not believe that the majority of that freedom of speech that's being allowed on Twitter is infused with racism or something. Most people who use that freedom of speech, like myself, are using it to state how tired we are of the state of everything today is. I'm not advocating for people to die or be erased. If you're a frequent watcher of this channel, you know that already. But I also think simply because your show uses ideology to shield itself from criticism is also lazy and condescending. If you want to add things like trans characters or people of color in leading roles, you are allowed to do that. But it should be equally accepted that it is not the job of the customer to have to accept things they don't want to watch, and they should not be vilified or attacked for thinking that way. But that's what this culture war boils down to anyway. You have the people who want to control everything pushing messages down people's throats. And on the other hand, you have people like Elon Musk saying customers should have the right to choose, and that's where these boycotts are emerging from. Like, do these people understand that what they're pushing is just not what people want anymore? When Elon Musk, a literal billionaire who sells flamethrowers and cars, can just sit there and casually say that users are already boycotting and canceling Disney services, like, do they realize how bad this is getting for them? Elon Musk's boycott of Disney is genuinely something that could grow into nuclear levels if Disney doesn't course correct right away. I don't think these advertisers and business people fathom just how large of an influence Elon has on Twitter and its users. And I don't mean that in a bad way, mind you, I mean that genuinely. While I'm sure Elon is nowhere near perfect, the fact remains that he has become a symbol for the people of today when it comes to what they want versus what companies want instead. His words have meaning the same way any influential person does. Like, if the rumors that Taylor Swift is Dazzler in Deadpool 3 are true, that would immediately confirm that the movie will make $1 billion easily. Because Taylor Swift can simply just tweet or whatever and say, hey, I'm in Deadpool and it's really awesome, you should watch it. And that's it. Boom. Millions will buy tickets. It's the same with someone like Beyonce. These people have a level of influence that whatever they say can immediately shift the power dynamics of things overnight. Elon, whether you hate him or not, you have to admit that he has a similar effect. Except instead of Taylor Swift's audience of teen girls and millennial women, Musk has his hands on the Redditors and Twitter users of the world, which equates to millions of people listening to whatever he says. So the last thing Disney could want to happen is for those millions of users to be told that Disney hates Elon Musk and Twitter. And the fact that this is already happening to the levels of boycott that has been achieved already proves that Disney needs to course correct before this boycott ends up going Kaioken times 10 or ends up transforming into Super Saiyan God form before it's too late. Because if Elon Musk could summon a spirit bomb, I guarantee you the Redditors and Twitter users of the world would raise their hands up and give him the energy he needs to nuke Disney's headquarters with a base spirit bomb if he could. But this is what happens when you prioritize things like social engineering over entertainment. And speaking of social engineering, let's finish with that upcoming Amazon Fallout series, which ThatParkPlace.com said in their article that Prime Video's Fallout TV creators confirm show will feature heavy social commentary. I knew it, dude. I freaking knew it. They're gonna Netflix The Witcher this thing into the ground. And this is exactly what Elon Musk has been vocal against, using social messaging to indoctrinate users into thinking certain ways. Fallout's new live-action series show has been confirmed by its creators that it'll do just that. One of the creators of the show is Jonathan Nolan. Yeah, he's the brother of Christopher Nolan. Anyway, he said while being interviewed by Vanity Fair that the games are about the culture of division and haves not that unfortunately have only gotten more and more acute in this country and around the world over the last decades. We get to talk about that in a wonderful fictional way. I think we're all looking at the world and going, God, things seem to be heading in a very, very frightening direction. Apparently, the plot of Amazon's Fallout will be about the various factions within the world chasing an artifact that has the potential to change the power dynamic of the world. And this show has the potential to use this to really tell a multi-layered story, but I'm skeptical that that'll happen. I also noticed that the main character is yet again a strong female because of course it is. And this push for strong social commentary has me really worried. Maybe they'll use it to criticize all sides of the political angle, but in the article they state factions like the Brotherhood of Steel are a mixture of military bravado and brotherhood. I just really hope they don't use the Brotherhood as an allegory or some virtue signaling nonsense to push concepts like why we need to defund the police. Or God forbid they end up turning the Brotherhood into a caricature and try to paint them as Make America Great Again. And they make them bigots and then they say look how bad conservatives are. I know it might seem like I'm grasping for straws, but shows like Fallout have all the tools and ability to allow these writers to really pander if they wanted to. And what worries me the most is that Fallout's social commentary angle is reminiscent of every other bad video game adaptation out there. And it represents the potential of what I truly hope doesn't happen again like it did with The Witcher. Because in the past, these weirdo writers have taken properties like Witcher or Scott Pilgrim and more, and they use them in order to push the kind of nonsense audiences have been tired of for years now. Fallout has the potential to be amazing, but on the other hand, my cynical brain sees yet another beloved property that's going to get hijacked by activists to use in order to project their ideologies using a pre-established built-in fan base in order to push social engineering. I want nothing more than to be completely wrong here, and I genuinely hope this Fallout show goes the way of the One Piece live action and ends up being great. But I apologize if my cynical, tired heart has become accustomed to seeing the things I love being infiltrated by people and ruined in order to pander. And the fact the main character of the show is yet again another strong female character, like bloody hell I'm tired, dude. Call me sexist if you want, but it's not believable that a 130-pound woman could survive in the post-apocalyptic world of Fallout in a believable way. Never mind shooting people, if anyone gets close to her in hand-to-hand, she's cooked. And if a mutated animal attacks her, she doesn't stand a chance. I know you can play a woman in the games too, but it's like the Mad Max Furiosa trailer that just dropped. I just can't believably look at the twig of a person that is Anya Taylor-Joy and believe that a 90-pound woman could survive something like the apocalypse. But what do I know? I'm just a man who's tired of all of this nonsense. But like I said, I hope I'm wrong and Fallout is great. But I don't have much hope these days for these kinds of things anymore. So will Fallout be another ESG-filled nothing burger? I guess time will tell. And will Elon Musk's comments about Disney get worse in the coming days or weeks? I guess we'll see too. But I think in the end, what these stories and more are all pointing towards is that we're all entering a new stage of the culture war, where the customers are not only tired but becoming emboldened by their sense of community. And the companies are desperately trying to squash any form of rebellion before it incinerates them completely. But if you ask me, this is where the fun begins. But until then, thank you for watching, dear viewers. Subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. Thanks to my patrons as always, and like I always say, please take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day, stay cynical, and I'll see you in the next one.